The tale of the monster may have just remained an obscure folklore from a small town. However, in 1934, a photograph was released claiming to show the beast in all of its glory. The photograph was published around the world, and the hunt for Nessie began in earnest. The earliest report of a monster in the vicinity of Loch Ness appears in the Life of St. Columba by Adam N., written in the 6th century Anno Domini. According to Adam N., writing about a century after the events described, Irish monk St. Columba was staying in the land of the Picts with his companions when he encountered local residents burying a man by the river Ness. They explained that the man was swimming in the river when he was attacked by a water beast that mauled him and dragged him underwater despite their attempts to rescue him by boat. Columba sent a follower, Luin Macu Min, to swim across the river. The beast approached him, but Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Go no further. Do not touch the man. Go back at once." The creature stopped as if it had been pulled back with ropes and fled, and Columba's men and the Picts gave thanks for what they perceived as a miracle. Believers in the monster point to this story, set in the river Ness rather than the loch itself, as evidence for the creature's existence as early as the 6th century. Skeptics question the narrative's reliability, noting that water beast stories were extremely common in medieval hagiographies, and Adam N's tale probably recycles a common motif attached to a local landmark. According to skeptics, Adam N's story may be independent of the modern Loch Ness monster legend and became attached to it by believers seeking to bolster their claims. Ronald Binns considers that this is the most serious of various alleged early sightings of the monster, but all other claimed sightings before 1933 are dubious and do not prove a monster tradition before that date. Christopher Kearney uses a specific historical and cultural analysis of Adam N to separate Adam N's story about St. Columba from the modern myth of the Loch Ness monster, but finds an earlier and culturally significant use of Celtic water beast folklore along the way. In doing so, he also discredits any strong connection between Kelpies or water horses and the modern media augmented creation of the Loch Ness monster. He also concludes that the story of St. Columba may have been impacted by earlier Irish myths about the Cowar and an Oilifist. In October 1871, D. Mackenzie of Balnain reportedly saw an object resembling a log or an upturned boat wriggling and churning up the water, moving slowly at first before disappearing at a faster speed. The account was not published until 1934, when Mackenzie sent his story in a letter to Rupert Gould shortly after popular interest in the monster increased. In 1888, Mason Alexander MacDonald of Abriation sighted a large, stubby-legged animal surfacing from the loch and propelling itself within 50 yards of the shore where MacDonald stood. MacDonald reported his sighting to Loch Ness water bailiff Alex Campbell and described the creature as looking like a salamander. The best-known article that first attracted a great deal of attention about a creature was published on 2 May 1933 in the Inverness Courier about a large beast or whale-like fish. The article by Alex Campbell, water bailiff for Loch Ness and a part-time journalist, discussed a sighting by Aldi McKay of an enormous creature with the body of a whale rolling in the water in the loch, while she and her husband John were driving on the 82 on 15 April 1933. The word monster was reportedly applied for the first time in Campbell's article, although some reports claim that it was coined by editor Evan Barron. The Courier in 2017 published excerpts from the Campbell article, which had been titled "Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness." The creature disported itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. Soon, however, it disappeared in a boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that here was no ordinary denizen of the depths, because, apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer. According to a 2013 article, McKay said that she had yelled, "Stop! The beast!" when viewing the spectacle. In the late 1980s, a naturalist interviewed Aldi McKay, and she admitted to knowing that there had been an oral tradition of a beast in the loch well before her claimed sighting. Alex Campbell's 1933 article also stated that Loch Ness has for generations been credited with being the home of a fearsome-looking monster. Modern interest in the monster was sparked by a sighting on 22 July 1933, when George Spicer and his wife saw a most extraordinary form of animal cross the road in front of their car. They described the creature as having a large body, about 4 feet high and 25 feet long, and a long, wavy, narrow neck, slightly thicker than an elephant's trunk, and as long as the 10-12-foot width of the road. They saw no limbs. It lurched across the road toward the loch 20 yards away, leaving a trail of broken undergrowth in its wake. Spicer described it as the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that I have ever seen in my life, and as having a long neck, which moved up and down in the manner of a scenic railway. It had an animal in its mouth, and had a body that was fairly big, with a high back. But if there were any feet, they must have been of the web kind, and as for a tail, I cannot say, as it moved so rapidly, and when we got to the spot, it had probably disappeared into the loch. Though he was the first to describe the creature as a plesiosaur-like dinosaur, evidence suggested by researchers at Columbia University in 2013 proved his story to be fake. The university and Daniel Loxton suggested that Spicer's sighting was fictionalized and inspired by a long-necked dinosaur that rises out of a lake in King Kong, a film that was extremely popular in theaters in his home city of London during August 1933, when Spicer reported the sighting. On 4 August 1933, the Courier published a report of Spicer's sighting. This sighting triggered a massive amount of public interest and an uptick in alleged sightings, leading to the solidification of the actual name Loch Ness monster. It has been claimed that sightings of the monster increased after a road was built along the loch in early 1933, bringing workers and tourists to the formerly isolated area. However, Binns has described this as the myth of the Lonely Loch, as it was far from isolated before then, due to the construction of the Caledonian Canal. In the 1930s, the existing road by the side of the loch was given a serious upgrade. Hugh Gray's photograph taken near Foyers on 12 November 1933 was the first photograph alleged to depict the monster. It was slightly blurred, and it has been noted that if one looks closely, the head of a dog can be seen. Gray had taken his Labrador for a walk that day, and it is suspected that the photograph depicts his dog fetching a stick from the loch. Others have suggested that the photograph depicts an otter or a swan. The original negative was lost. However, in 1963, Maurice Burton came into possession of 2 lantern slides, contact positives from the original negative, and when projected onto a screen, they revealed an otter rolling at the surface in characteristic fashion. On 5 January 1934, a motorcyclist, Arthur Grant, claimed to have nearly hit the creature while approaching Abriachin near the northeastern end of the loch at about 1 a.m. on a moonlit night. According to Grant, it had a small head attached to a long neck. The creature saw him and crossed the road back to the loch. Grant, a veterinary student, described it as a cross between a seal and a plesiosaur. He said he dismounted and followed it to the loch, but saw only ripples. Grant produced a sketch of the creature that was examined by zoologist Maurice Burton, who stated it was consistent with the appearance and behavior of an otter. Regarding the long size of the creature reported by Grant, it has been suggested that this was a faulty observation due to the poor light conditions. Paleontologist Darren Naish has suggested that Grant may have seen either an otter or a seal and exaggerated his sighting over time.
This video was the first part of Loch Ness evidence, and the second part will be posted on the channel soon. Now, do you think there is Loch Ness or not?